All right, so I watched this video, Is Progressive Christianity Dangerous? By this woman, I think her name is Alisa Childers. I think that's right. Apparently she used to be in Zoe Girl. Zoe Girl, yeah. And they mean anything to anybody. Yeah, it really does, Craig. It's a great Christian band. Okay, whatever. Let's put it up there with Hawk. Ethan Hawke. What's the other band? Weak Hawk, the Weak Hawk, the Falcon Hawk, the Weak Falcon or something. What's the other one? Hawk Falcon or something? I was just talking about some weak-ass Christian band that I'd never heard of. And here's another one. I've heard of Zoe Girl. No, I really have. I've heard of Zoe Girl, but I don't know anything about them. And apparently she was a big star with Zoe Girl. So yeah, this is a big, important Christian. Now, I listened to her interview on Is Progressive Christianity Dangerous on her stream on Capturing Christianity. Then I watched her debate with, it was actually that woman who's that big mega church woman who had that million YouTube views. You know, I used to be a mega church person, now I'm deconverted. And actually I like a lot of what this woman has to say. It's very, very interesting. There's a couple of things that she is getting wrong that are relatively important. First of all, what she calls a progressive Christianity, let's just clear this up right off the bat. I call that a wussy Christian. A wussy Christian, and I've talked about this in the past, I am not opposed to wussy Christians. A wussy Christian is kind of like these middle of the road, namby-pamby, like, oh, God is love, I don't really believe in hell, because God would never do that. Yeah, they're weak. Sounds like Craig. Yeah, they're weak, they're wussies. They're middle of the road, like, oh, God, there's probably not literally an Adam and Eve. They probably were metaphorical. They're like that. Rob Bell is one. You might have heard of Rob Bell. Oh, I don't think there's a hell. I think everybody goes to heaven. Oh, it's so beautiful. And they're like, you can vote for a Democrat if you want to. It's okay if you vote for Hillary Clinton. Yeah, namby-pamby. Wussies. There was. That sounds really lame, Craig. Yeah, they're pretty lame. I'll give you that. Now, you all know me. You know how I roll, right? Okay, hard-charging Texas evangelist is where I'm at. That is, all things being equal, I vastly prefer the man's man type of Christianity that I'm training Brett to become. If you don't know who Brett is, I've got an atheist that I'm turning into a Christian. That's our ongoing project. And he ain't going to be no namby-pamby, middle of the road, oh, it's okay if you vote for a Democrat type Christian. It's going to be hard-charging, take no prisoners Texas evangelist. If you even think of voting for a Democrat, you're going to burn in hell. Yes, I love it. Take no prisoners, Brett. When you become a Christian, Brett, watch out. Watch out. He's going to set the world on fire. As what? As a take no prisoners, hard-charging, man's man Christian. None of this namby-pamby, middle-of-the-road garbage. But here's what I have to say about these namby-pamby wussy Christians. They're wussies. I mean, let's be honest. They're kind of weak. Okay, but here's the thing about them that's good. First of all, they're more palatable to the atheists. They're useful. They're idiots, Craig, fine, but they're useful idiots. And they're useful to us in this space. Why? Because, A, they're more palatable to the atheists. Atheists don't like Rob Bell, but they like him a lot better than Kent Hovind. I promise you that, and Ken Ham. They'll find a lot of their views more... Some of them, it depends on which particular wussy Christian you're talking about. They're all over the place, and they're all different strands of wussy Christian. Now, if you are a wussy Christian listening to this, he's one of the liberal, mamby-pamby, middle-of-the-road Christians. If you have come about your position with integrity, I don't object to it. Believe what you actually believe. Don't fake it to be part of the club. First of all, the club is not a series of propositions that we all, assent to. That's not what Christianity is about. It's not, I believe Adam and Eve were real human beings. Do you believe they were real human beings? Does he believe? Let's police each other's beliefs. Because that's kind of what she's talking about. When she says, is progressive Christianity dangerous? What she's saying is, let's police the beliefs of the people in our community. It's not a good idea, first off. It's really just not. What she's talking about is the first step towards dogmatic Christianity, which none of us really like. Now, except Brett. Yes, Brett is going to be dogmatic, of course. Take no prisoners. Take no prisoners, Brett. Sentence anyone you have to hell for as long as you want. Attorney. All right, I'm trying to be serious. Okay, so Alisa Childers, a couple of key things she gets wrong. Now, believe it or not, I don't object to a lot of what she had to say. I found it somewhat edifying, and she's somewhat right. She just, first of all, she misinterpreted her own experience and the source of her distress when she went through a process where she almost deconverted. They call it deconstruction nowadays. Yeah, that's new hip lingo. It's deconstructing your faith. And she went through a process where she was in a church where she was ostensibly under the care of a wussy Christian, a progressive Christian. But here's the thing that she doesn't recognize. She wasn't. The guy in her church wasn't a wussy, middle-of-the-road Christian. He was pretty much an atheist agnostic. He was literally like right on the verge of deconverting completely. He was 1 month away from being Pine Creek Doug. He wasn't a middle of the road. I believe some things in the Bible, but I don't believe others. I believe some aspects of Christianity, but I don't believe others. He wasn't one of those. He was, I'm almost out the door, and a year from now I'm going to be Pine Creek Doug, and let me deconvert you. That's what he was doing. He had a very different agenda. It wasn't just, let's all touchy-feely and explore. It was, let's deconvert you. Let's all think clearly about this so we all deconvert. So we all realize that this is fake. I swear to God, that's what she explains. She describes it as a progressive Christian. It isn't. Some of these progressive Christians are actually really thinking about these things in ways that are actually worth your time, and depends on the person. For example, and some of them are getting into trouble for reasons other than what they actually believe. This is a long, complicated subject, so I apologize, I'm going all over the place, but all of this needs to be said. So, for example, Jordan Peterson is not a Bible literalist, correct? Neither is Rob Bell. If I put Rob Bell's beliefs on the Bible, I read Rob Bell's book on the Bible, it's pretty interesting, and some of it's really interesting and good. If I put what he says about the Bible next to what Jordan Peterson says about the Bible, none of you would be able to tell the difference. None of you would be able to tell the difference. So why is Rob Bell getting so much trouble? Because some of this is politics, some of this is politics, some of this is politics, some of this is politics. And I think he is being politically dense. I think he made some decisions somewhere along the way where he deliberately stuck his finger in the eye of the fundamentalist community and caused dust-ups that didn't need to happen. Now, Jordan Peterson does it too, but he picked better enemies for himself. He sticks his finger in the mind, in the eye of the, not the secular left, but you know who he tends to provoke. So he wound up clearly on the side. Most of the same conservative, quote-unquote conservative Christians who would castigate Rob Bell would probably not recognize that some of his beliefs about the Bible are literally almost identical to Jordan Peterson. And they praise Jordan Peterson. Why? Because they recognize Jordan Peterson as an ally. That's the only thing I want you to see. That they recognize Jordan Peterson as an ally. Well, reality check. So is Rob Bell. So is Rob Bell. That's my only point. Yeah, he's a little weak about some things, and he believes some things that are probably false, and he's a little bit of a wuss. He's a wuss. He's a wuss, Craig. I understand that. He's a hippied out, wussified Christian. I get that. But he's not that different from Jordan Peterson. And he's a lot easier of a sell to an atheist. That's the point. And he's struggling with some of these things in an area where he's batting around with some interpretations that are probably true, or more true than not. Now, why he got himself into trouble, I'm guessing because he made a lot of politically stupid decisions. Now, a wussy Christian closer to home, for example, is Randall Rouser. I don't know that much about Randall Rouser, but I gather he's pretty liberal on a bunch of things. All I know about him is I see his tweets every day, and he's always got, I hate Trump, I hate Trump. Basically, when he's not talking about theological things, he's basically going, I hate Trump, I hate Trump, I hate Trump. I hate Trump, I hate Trump so much, I hate him. Now, he went on Stephanie's channel. He's really interesting. When he talks about theology, he can be really smart. That's my point. When he went on Doug's channel, it was really interesting. Why? Because Doug gave him no quarter, as if he was the most triggered out, rabid, sold out fundamentalist. Doug makes no differentiation between a wussy Christian and a fundamentalist. That's the point. We're all on the same squad. And the wussy Christian is not an atheist. They're on our side. They do some of the things that we like. Yeah, they might be a wuss here and there. But they got some really interesting things to say sometimes. Depends. It really honestly depends on which one. Some of them are doing it because they're a little bit of sellouts. Because they got too much of I want to appeal to, CNN. I want to be on CNN to talk, crap about Trump. See, that's what he tweets a lot about Trump. Now, I don't begrudge anybody's political opinions. If you honestly think Trump's terrible, it's his prerogative. But that's not kingdom first. That's my point. So that's the only place where I really part ways with these people. And I consider myself more kindred spirits, believe it or not, with the sold-out fundamentalists to some degree. You might find that hard to believe, but I do. I don't necessarily disagree with a lot of what she had to say. I just disagree with like a couple of core things. I don't. And I've talked about this with Ron. I'm not that different from a fundamentalist. It's more about tone and what you think your role is as an evangelist and as a ambassador for the gospel. She seems to think, and this is actually a really not a good idea, that our goal should be policing other people's beliefs. No, it should not. Not now, not ever. Calling somebody else's beliefs dangerous means you need to correct them somehow. It's not our goal. And that's not what the Bible tells you to do. If it's a non-believer, the Bible's crystal clear on how you are to behave. I become all things to all people so that I might win some. That's exactly what I do. That's exactly what evangelism actually is. That's from the Apostle Paul. I become all things to all people so that I might win some. That's, hey, JB, I understand where you come from, man. Yeah, this religion stuff is so, I understand how, you try to be a cool Christian. That sounds dark, Phil Craig. Well, whatever. I'd say I'm good at it. I just said, that sounds really darky, Craig. Well, whatever. Break bread with the atheists. That's what I do. It's what I do when I have atheists on my channel. I try and relate, man. I want to relate to you, bro. That's evangelism 101. Why? Because that's how you plant seeds. That's what the Bible tells you to do. Plant seeds. I brought this up before. It's worth repeating. That's real evangelism. Why? Because you plant seeds that cannot be uprooted. Those seeds emanate from who you actually are. People pick up so much more by who you actually are. Those seeds are not consciously planted. So they can't think about it later on and go, oh, I better get this out of my mind and that. They just hung out with you. And they picked up seeds that you didn't even know you were planting, so they can't be uprooted, but they came out of who you actually are. That's one point. Now, the most important point about this, let me see how much time I have. I know I'm rambling a little, but there's a lot to say on this subject, so I'm going to go back to it after 12 minutes, not that bad. After I go back and I'm going to watch Laura Robinson and her husband are doing a stream on this, and I'm going to watch that, and then I'll do another video on it. But, okay, so, here's the mistake that Alisa Childers makes, and I listened to her story really carefully, and I heard things that she didn't even know that she said. But the person that she thinks, when she talks about her dark night of the soul and how she almost deconverted, she calls it deconstructed. Okay, she thought that guy was a wussy Christian. He wasn't. He was 1 month away from being Pine Creek Doug. He was an atheist agnostic, practically evangelical, trying to deconvert his crew. He really was kind of a wolf in sheep's clothing because he was presenting himself as something other than he actually was, to some degree. That's not what wussy Christians are. Wussy Christians are people who have come to actual conclusions after prayer and study, and they've come to real decisions. Randall Rouser is not a wolf in sheep's clothing. I don't know how much of a liberal Christian he actually is. I just gather he's some. But when you hear him on theology and stuff like that, he's got a lot of interesting things to say, and he's thought long and hard about it, and he's prayed over it. Ditto for someone like Peter Enns. Now, I'm not saying I agree with all these guys. I'm just saying that some of what they have to say and talk about is valuable, and they will go over far better with the atheists. Far, far better with the atheists. They are useful to us. We don't have to agree with everything they said. What they say or they think or they believe. Again, Christianity is not a set of propositions that we all have to agree to. Now, I'm relatively certain Alisa Childers believes in her heart of heart that one day she's going to stand before the Lord and answer for the deeds in her body, correct? So do I. It's not going to be a pop quiz. I swear to God. And she knows this if she thinks about it. It's not going to be a pop quiz. Did you believe this or not? Did you believe this about the Bible or not? It's not. It's going to be, how did you treat people? Were you Christ-like? Did you feed the sick? Did you help the homeless? How did you act towards the least of my children? Were you a decent human being? Were you good? I told you to be good. Were you? Were you good to other people? Not, did you believe that Moses authored the Pentateuch? Swear to God, that's not going to be on the judgment. Promise. And she knows it too. Now, she did not reconnect with Chris. She almost deconverted, but she doesn't realize why she stayed in the fold. And it wasn't because she came to arguments for God. She stayed in the fold because she had had experiences. This is the words out of her own mouth, and I promise you they were central to her staying as a Christian. Out of her own mouth, she said, I had these experiences, and I now see, okay, fine, these experiences could have been, my brain chemistry flooding me and making me feel all these feelings, but they felt like they were actually God. Bang, just like that. They actually felt like they were really God. Bang. That's why she stayed a Christian, not because she reconnected to arguments. That might have helped her feel more secure. But that's not why she stayed a Christian. She stayed a Christian because she had experiences like I talk about all the time. If you have these really convincing experiences and you actually go, wait a minute, that really did feel like God. Really hard to walk away from those. Why? Because they actually feel like they're God. You would be denying something really, really, really deep inside of yourself. You can't really deconvert when you've had those. Now, she had those strong. Again, atheists hear this clearly. You can have small versions of those that aren't very convincing, which is what a lot of you had. Matt Dillahunty had small versions of those. And again, the analogy I make is the analogy that holds. Consider it like going out and drinking a bottle of vodka and you saying, I know what that's all about. I had a beer once 15 years ago. Wow, I was smashed. The intensity and how real these experiences are to you makes a really big difference. You can't have spiritual experiences that you honestly believe are God, that are powerful enough and real enough and enough of them, and then walk away. You can't. Why? Because something inside of you is going to gnaw at you. I kind of think that was really God. That's going to bother you. You can have small versions where you don't really know and then discredit those. It's not the same thing. And I know that wasn't that clear how I just said it now, but I promise you, that's why she stayed a Christian. It wasn't because she stumbled upon, a couple of convincing arguments. Most of those arguments are only half-baked. They're only half convincing. And then what she calls a conservative Christian starts being weird. Mosaic authorship. Now, I don't know for a fact that Moses wrote the Pentateuch. Pretty sure there's Michael Heiser is the only person who I've listened to on the subject. I really don't honestly care about a lot of these, scholarly debates about the Bible. Really, honestly, don't care. I know that there's a set of facts that somewhere down the road, everyone's going to go, okay, somebody wrote the Bible, okay? We all agree on that. Yeah, we do. And some of the characters actually lived. We all agree on that. Yeah, okay, we do. And one day, the historians are going to piece together, this is what happened, and this is what happened, and this is who wrote what. Once they get to that point, I'll go, okay, cool, now I know. But prior to that point, it doesn't really make a big difference to me. But Michael Heiser, for example, as far as I know, he's considered a conservative scholar, or of the conservative tribe. And he doesn't think that Moses wrote I think he thinks Moses wrote some of it, like 20% Mosaic authorship or something like that. That's what I heard from his video. Could have gotten that wrong. But the point is, the idea is, here are these propositions that you can't believe. Why? Because it's dangerous to us. That's Pine Creek Dougland. She's handing him out ammunition. He's licking his chops because here's this thing. Because as soon as you make one of these things a sacred cow to Christianity, you have erected a sacred cow. Here's these things you can't believe and not be in the club. For example, I'm pretty sure she cites Mosaic authorship. Okay, that's not a given. That's my point. That's not a given. Some conservative Christians think that Hebrews wasn't written by Paul. I don't really know where the conservatives are on by that. But I tend to think that Hebrews doesn't seem like it was written by Paul. Why? Because the arguments of Bart Ehrman make sense to me. He says, it doesn't sound like Paul's language, and I look at it, it doesn't seem like Paul. I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Doesn't mean it's right. I don't know for a fact, and I don't really care. That's the point. Why? Because it's not important. She's making the same cognitive error that Pine Creek Doug makes, that somehow the there's this fastidious black and white truths that are relevant to the ontology. They aren't. She doesn't need to make that mistake. Why? Because it's the ontology of what she experienced that kept her in the church. It's not that she found a couple people who answered some of these objections convincingly. That's not what kept her in the fold. What kept her in the fold is she had experiences that she actually thought were God. That's out of the words of her own mouth. She doesn't recognize that those are the things that kept her in the dark night of the soul. Not the half-baked answers that apologists come up with. Some of the apologist answers are good, some of them are terrible, they're all over the place. But they aren't why people stayed. Or they aren't why she stayed, at least. Maybe they are for some people. So, I don't know. Yeah, I know. I'm all over. You're all over the place, Craig. I know. What are you trying to say? I thought I said it pretty well. No? All right, well. First off, Christianity is not a set of propositions. There's a lot more going on than that. There's a whole thing called your spiritual walk. And the only thing, there's no such thing as this is dangerous for Christians to believe. There's no such thing as this is dangerous if other people believe this. It's nothing to do with you. Let every man be thoroughly convinced in your own heart. She can passionately believe that she's right and passionately talk about that, and I assent to that 100%. But the idea that now we look at what some other people believe and we gotta police that, that's where you start to get into trouble. Why? Because that's a really, really fallacious idea. The fervency and the importance of what is meaningful to me and my religious beliefs is not predicated at all at what any other person believes outside of myself. Ever. Never. It's never what it's about. It's about my connection to the living God. It's about my connection to God, period. And she knows this too. She's just not acting from it. Why? Because I'm positive she'd tell you that she's going to stand before God one day, and I'm positive she recognizes it's not a pop quiz. She's not going to answer for, different questions. She's not going to answer about Mosaic scholarship. How did you treat people? Were you actually Christ-like? Were you actually fervent in prayer? Did you actually pray? A lot of questions that are going to come that she's going to have to stand for. And I think she's kind of on those pages. That's why I kind of like her. I mean, I think she's kind of like, in some ways, like an on-fire Christian, and some of what she's about, I totally applaud. So it's complicated. That's why this video is all over the place. I got a lot to say on it, and this is just my first attempt. So I'll try again after I watch that video and take this particular video with a grain of salt. It's all over the place. I understand that. All right, guys, that is all for now. Master said to go in peace. Amen.